Well, since we have the climbing and trailing garden this year, I thought we'd take a little bit of time to see how vines climb. Now, actually, vines climb by elongation of their stems. They basically grow. However, where they differ is that they attach themselves to things very differently. Now, one of the classic vining plants is the grape plant here, and it actually uses tendrils. You can see a tendril here that's growing out. It's just a modified stem, and you can see it over here where it's actually attached itself to a wire. And this is one of the many methods that plants use to attach themselves. Now, we have plants that we grow for food that are vines, and also many plants that have very good ornamental value. But it's important to know how a plant attaches itself to a structure so that you'll know what type of vine will work for what type of situation. Well, one of the first groups that I wanted to take a look at are the vines that can actually attach themselves to a structure unaided. So you don't have to add any special wires or anything like that. Now, the first group of these plants are things like English ivy. They actually attach themselves with small aerial roots, also known as holdfasts. Now, these roots will actually go ahead and attach in small crevices or cracks, and they will climb a stone wall or a tree unaided by anything. Now, for plants such as English ivy and other plants that attach themselves this way, it's important to realize this, that those little aerial roots actually need a little crevice to grab into. So they need a rough surface to climb. If you have a very smooth surface, they are not going to be able to attach themselves. Now, in addition to English ivy, winter creeper euonymus also attaches itself to buildings this way. Now, another method of attachment without aid is by using small, almost adhesive discs on little tendril-like appendages. And a vine that uses this method is the Virginia creeper. You can see here the small discs, and this will actually attach itself to fairly smooth surfaces in addition to surfaces such as rough wood, walls, or trees. So this vine can actually climb very well this way. Now, this Virginia creeper will actually climb by kind of twining in addition to these discs. So it can also twine up a pole or a wire very well. Boston ivy is another vine that uses this method. Now, as we were talking about before, other vines use tendrils to attach themselves to things. And this is important to know because we're getting into a group of vines that actually will need some type of support in addition to a wall or something for them to attach to. You can see here that a grape needs a wire or something. If I were to train this on a smooth wall, this tendril would have nothing to grab onto. Now, other plants that use tendrils are plants such as the clematis, but the tendril is just a little bit different, and we're going to go take a look at that right now. Now, the clematis, as I said, also uses tendrils. However, they're a little bit different. If you look here, you'll notice that the tendril is actually the petiole of the leaf, and it actually wraps around the structure and holds on. And that is how the clematis climbs. Now, it's important to realize this because, as you'll notice, these can actually wrap around this small wire. However, if you have a large surface, that tendril can't grab onto that. And so you have to provide some form of support for this so that it can grasp that and go ahead and climb. A cattle panel works very well for something like clematis. Now, we have a similar vine in our climbing and trailing garden, and we're going to go take a look at that. Well, the leaves of the purple bell vine also act as tendrils, and right down here you can see where it's actually started to climb on itself. Now, this is an important point. If you have a pole like this, it's a little bit large for a tendril to grab. However, if you can train the plant up the pole until it reaches the top, it can actually start to climb on itself as it fills in. So that's one way that a vine with tendrils can climb up a larger surface. Now, there's even another way that tendrils work, and that is with small extensions at the end of the leaf. Now, this is a climbing lily, and you can see here how the ends of the leaf actually curl around, and then down here you can notice where they have grabbed onto places here on this little support. Now, sweet peas also use this method. They have tendrils at the ends or attached to their leaves, and a lot of times you'll put sticks in the ground for those sweet peas to climb up. Now, these are just a few of the plants that climb by using tendrils. Others include passion flower and scarlet runner beans. But there's yet still another method that plants use to climb, and that is twining, and we're going to go take a look at some of those plants. Now, a firecracker vine is an example of a vine that climbs by twining. So as it grows, you can see here, it actually winds itself around a support. Instead of using tendrils, the vine itself actually winds around that. Now, this is important, as in plants that climb with tendrils. It's important to provide something that the plant can actually wrap around. If we were to put this vine at the base of this large tree here, and not provide any way of it to climb, it wouldn't be able to wrap around the tree. However, if we have a wire running the length of this, it can actually wrap around the wire and reach the top of our tower. Now, there are several vines that climb in this fashion. These include mandevilla, also morning glory, honeysuckle, and wisteria. Another interesting thing about vines that twine is usually they'll wrap in the same direction. So if you notice here that our vine happens to be wrapping in a counterclockwise direction, all of that vine will wrap in a counterclockwise direction. Now, this is an important thing to remember if you want to kind of train your vine, because if you come along, see, I've got this wayward piece here, and I want to wrap that around the wire a little bit to help it along. If I wrap that around the opposite direction, it will actually unwind itself and then wind itself the right way. So study your vine to see what direction it wraps around its support, and then continue wrapping it in that direction. Now, this is another interesting thing is that Chinese wisteria actually always wraps in a clockwise direction. That would be if you were looking at it from the top, while Japanese wisteria always wraps in a counterclockwise direction. And that's just an interesting note of trivia. Now, our last group of vines aren't really vines at all. They're actually kind of shrubs that have very long branches on them that kind of flail or scramble. And these actually climb by attaching. Now, here we've got our bougainvillea, and we have one of these in our climbing and trailing garden, and I've just got a specimen here to show you how they actually climb. Now, what happens is these long branches may flail in the wind until they catch on something, either each other or a post or sometimes you, and then they'll kind of stay together. Now, what helps them to attach, if you look very closely on a bougainvillea, are the thorns. If you've ever moved a bougainvillea, you know they have thorns, and they can be kind of troublesome. But you can see these, and these thorns actually will catch on something else and help them to hold. However, many times these vines need some extra support to stay attached so they don't just flail in the wind. So if you can use something to tie those to the support, say a fence or an arch or something like that, that will really help. Now, another plant that climbs this way are the climbing roses. Again, they have the very long arching branches, and it also has the thorns on it that can grab either you or another surface to help it climb. And so basically what you need to do is help it along and attach it to either an arbor, some kind of a trellis, or a fence so that it can climb and you can have the best display out of your roses. Basically, what we've covered today are the ways that vines can climb, and it's important for you to find out how your particular vine is going to climb before you site it so that you can provide the tools that it needs to look its best.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.